Hello everybody, welcome to week 11 of our remote learning. We have 3 sessions this week. Obviously that's because a lot of you will be coming into college for your fourth one lesson in the week, which is on the poetry. And those of you who aren't coming into college, I will provide you with materials so you can access the learning that the students have done in school at home. But on this the main thing you're working on, which is your persuasive speeches, you've got 3 sessions, so roughly up to about 3 hours of work on those. Okay, so week 9 of remote learning, I asked you to come up with a topic for a persuasive speech. Some of you have sent me ideas and really impressed with your thoughts and what you're passionate about and things you want to talk about, which is awesome. Week 9 was then also about research, actually finding out stuff about your topic, so you've had stuff to say. Week 10, I then asked you to actually write the speech, and I went through every stage. I wanted a 6-part structure, and I went through every part of how to build the speech up. So because of that, I don't intend to set new work this week. It's really important that you have time to do the speech from last week. And I know that some of you will need a little bit more time than just 1 week's worth of lessons. So I'm really impressed with the work people have been sending me. It shows how much brilliantly you're doing, but it also shows me that you need a little bit more time working on those speeches. What I do want to go through with you this week is the importance of editing and redrafting, and to give you a framework to help you with editing and redrafting. Of course, send your work to your teachers. We will then give you advice to edit and redraft, but there's things you can do yourself as well. Okay, so based on the speeches I have been sent, I've generated 4 pieces of whole class feedback. 4 things which I think are recurring issues, which your speech, if you address these 4 things, could be so much better. The first of those is about logos. Remember, you have to actually try to educate your listener. You want to assume that your audience in this instance doesn't know a lot about your topic, particularly as some of you are picking quite complex topics. If you were addressing an audience of experts, it's a bit different. So if you're delivering a speech on climate change and you're delivering it to scientists, then obviously you're not going to include so much scientific detail, but you're delivering your speech to non-specialists, people who don't know a lot about whatever your topic is. They need to be educated, they need to learn something through your speech. The second point here is rhetorical figures. These are the devices that bring your speech to life, that give it power. And I've read some really nice persuasive arguments, or the emergence of some nice arguments, and with a bit of rhetorical language, a bit of rhetorical flair, they could really come to life. The third point is about pathos, emotive language. Don't just choose a word, think about which synonym is going to have the most impact and power. Is this word neutral, or is it loaded with emotional value? And not all words obviously need to be loaded with emotional value, but some do. And the other one is a more general point about signposting your speech. I've read a couple that are a bit jumpy. 1 minute you're talking about one thing and then it's jumped onto another topic and I get a little bit confused where it's going. Signposting is essential. So what I've created to help you address those issues is the 4 E's of persuasion. So I've suggested that the 4 things you want to achieve in order for a persuasive speech, letter, article, anything to be effective is engagement, education, emphasis and emotion. Firstly, you want to use language to help you bond with the audience. Direct address, saying you. Inclusive pronouns like we, us and our. An anecdote to share your personal experience. Education, I guess we would call that logos as well. Language to prove you are right. I want to learn something, and if you have to present me with information that proves you're right. Statistics, scientific studies, anecdotes, but anecdotes that inform me about the wider world rather than your personal experience. And opinions from knowledgeable experts. If you're doing a speech on the environment, what has David Attenborough got to say about it? If you're doing a speech on the rights of women, find somebody who's really knowledgeable on the topic. What have they got to say about it? And then we come into these fluffier bits, in a sense. This is the content, if you like. This is the bits that really brings it all to life, that gives it that pull. Look at your speech and think, what are the bits I really want to emphasise? What are the key points I want someone to nod along with as I say them, or I want them to really remember when they walk out the door? And that's when you use rhetorical devices. And it's not about going through a tick list and using them all, but it's thinking, I want this bit of my speech to stand out. I want the person listening to really hear this bit, and then thinking, which device could I use that's going to do that? Could I use alliteration to link two key words by sound? Could I create some antithesis to create contrast? Or maybe I could use anadiplosis to emphasise a word. So it's not about thinking, oh, I must use these techniques. It's about going through your speech line by line, highlighting the lines that you think, I really want that line to stand out, and then thinking, which of these techniques could I use to add that emphasis? And then emotion. And emotion is key. As I've said to you in previous sessions, yes, we need to educate and inform, but we also need to trigger some emotional response if we're going to be effective. So again, anecdotes are useful here, anecdotes that have an emotional pull. Emotive words are the most important. And that means looking at words and thinking, there's often 20 different words that more or less mean the same thing. And some of those words will be quite neutral. Some of them will be really loaded with emotion. And you want to think about, which version of that word could I use that has the best emotional appeal? Now, hyperbole means exaggeration, deliberate exaggeration. With persuasion, it's okay to be a bit over the top sometimes. Okay? So as you're writing your speech, or after you've written it and you're going back through it, think about the 4 E's. Think about, are you engaging and bonding with your audience? Are you educating them? Do they learn something? Do you use language to prove you're right? What are the most important points you want to say? How are you going to emphasise them? And how are you going to add emotional appeal? So let's practice that, because it's not easy and it takes time and patience to practice. So I've taken this really super paragraph that I was sent when a wonderful human was trying to persuade people to do more about climate change and pollution. They wrote, I have lost count of all the times that I have visited an area of outstanding beauty and either witnessed litter being dropped, seen it in piles on the road, or clumps in the ocean. It is only now that people are starting to realise that climate change and pollution are a growing problem that will affect generations to come more than any others. I really like that. They've told me an anecdote about their own personal experience. They're proving that they're right, that pollution is a problem, because they're giving me personal experience of it. And they've got a nice point to back that up. But I just think it could be more powerful. I think it could have a more of an impact on the audience with a few changes, thanks to the 4 E's. So please can you pause this video and make a note of at least 3 changes you think could be made to this couple of sentences using the 4 E's. So how could it become more educational, more emphasis, more emotion? Once you've made 3 suggestions of things you think could improve it, please restart the video. Okay guys, I hope you managed to decide on a few things. I've done the task at the same time as you, so I've exactly the task I set you to use the 4 E's to try and make this more powerful. I've done it as well. So you can see in red what I've changed. So I have lost count of all the times that I have visited an area of outstanding beauty and been appalled by the devastating impact humans have had on the natural world. I've added in an extra detail there. Obviously the use of the word appalled, it suggests anger, so it's got a little bit of emotion there. Devastating impact, again, that emotional appeal, and then humans have had on the natural world. So again, it creates that sense of guilt, maybe, that we're causing this. So I've just extended the sentence by trying to add in some information that's a bit more emotive, but also clearly puts the blame on humans to try and make my audience feel a sense of guilt. Then I've changed the second half of the sentence into separate sentences. Litter carelessly dropped. That 3-word sentence is going to be more memorable. It's going to stand out more because short sentences in fragments can sometimes have more power. Mountains of waste lining the roadside. Notice the original word was piles. Now mountains is hyperbolic, isn't it? So again, I've overemphasised the word choice to add that sense of emotional power. plastic that won't degrade for hundreds of years floating in the ocean. A little bit of logos there, plastic that won't degrade for hundreds of years. I've got a bit of a statistics in there. So it shows I'm proving I'm right through educating my audience. It's only now that people are starting to realise that pollution, in the original it says growing problem. I've gone for insidious issue. Insidious means something which is really damaging but subtle and isn't necessarily seen all the time. And obviously I've got a little bit of repetition here of all the I's, which we call God, the word's gone completely out of my head. Not alliteration. Assonance. It's assonance. Very similar to alliteration because it's the repetition of a letter, but it's a vowel, so we call it assonance. An insidious issue that is destroying our world. Again, I think the verb here was affect. I've gone for destroying. It's just more powerful. It is only now that people are starting to realise that our generation, so here I've gone with the engagement E, haven't I? I've used that inclusive word. Here I think it talks about generations to come, but let's say it's now. Our generation will be the ones who suffer the consequences of mindlessly destroying our home. Notice the anaphora here. This is something I really want people to remember, that we're only just waking up to what we're doing. So the anaphora, the repetition of it's only now that, and then the second sentence starting with the same words, creates rhythmical patterning and adds to the power of the language. And then I've also repeated this bit, haven't I? Destroying our world, destroying our home. So I've there quite slightly rechanged the language, changed that word at the end. Notice how I basically say exactly the same stuff. I go places and I see loads of litter and we're only just realising what we're doing. I've said exactly the same thing, but by thinking really carefully about words, thinking about how I can add in rhetorical figures, it's so much more powerful. And that's the key to good writing. Okay, so applying that to your own speeches then, what I've made for you on these slides is just a little flow chart. And what I would suggest to you is the best way to work out if your speech is any good is to read it aloud to someone. A parent, a sibling, a friend on FaceTime, anyone you can rope in. And just read them the speech. And then ask them these questions. And if they say yes, you can go on to the next question. But if they say no, there's some tasks for you to do. So the most important question, can they actually tell you what you were arguing? If not, you need to go back and address it. And there's 3 slides of this. So you need to go to Show My Homework, obviously, to find these slides. It's uploaded with the homework. And just read the speech aloud to someone, anybody. And then after you've read it to them, ask them each question. And as you ask them each question, make notes to yourself. I suggest you use this sentence stem. I will change to because. So if the question to answer to one of the questions, you say, can you remember one thing I said? And they can't, I will change. And then obviously fill in the gap with what you're going to change, what you're going to change it to and why, what effect you want to create. So that then when you've finished going through all the questions, you can come back to this. Now I've done this for my own speech, which obviously is on these slides, so you can read it through. But this is the speech I wrote with you last week. And after reading mine aloud to my, lucky husband who loves these things, I decided that I was going to change my anecdote about Alejandra to an anecdote about a child who works in the textiles industry, because this is more relevant to my audience. My anecdote about Alejandra, I think, worked well because it was really emotional about this poor little girl, but actually it's really remote. We don't even really know what curlies are or what work she does. And it is important, we know, but within the context of my speech, I think telling an anecdote about a child who makes clothes for fashion industry, which we then buy, is going to have more emotive impact and be more relevant. So I've just read my speech aloud, I've asked the questions, I'm happy with a lot of it, but I've noticed this is an issue, so I've written myself a note about what I'm going to change. You need to do the same, guys, yeah? Write your speech, most important bit. Send your speech to your teachers. We want to give you help and advice, but you can help yourselves as well. Read them aloud. Don't just be satisfied with your first draft. Think about at every stage how you can use the table of ease to really make it better, to really add engagement, education, emphasis and emotion across the speech. Thank you, guys.